There's no need to look so worried just because I'm checking the camera. So guess what? I found my tripod, and do you know I just found it like 2 seconds ago, and right now I can't even not remember where I dug it up from. Because I looked for it for an hour and did not find it. And you would think that when I did find it, that would be so momentous that I would remember that. Where I dug it up from. But this is sort of the world I live in. It's kind of a labyrinth of my own making. Anyway, I am here to talk to you about the symbolism of such movies as Mean Girls and Jawbreaker. And this is, I actually was not bullied in school, but I did not spend very long in school also. And it's funny because I probably people tend to, because I'm gay and I'm like, whatever I am, I dress the way that I feel like, and I'm very unconventional. People tend to assume that I probably would have been bullied, especially, I hate to say this, but especially in Canada. I think that Americans have the impression that Canada, because it's so liberal and left-wing in terms of legislation, that socially it would be also. And I know that I have seen some testimonials from Black people who lived in the States and then they went up north and visited Canada and hung out in Toronto and Hamilton and Windsor. And they found it very different. They said that they did not feel the separation between people of color and white people so much. I did, as a gay man, I did feel it. I feel it every time I go there. And it's funny because Toronto is very pro-gay and it had World Pride, I think, one year. I invariably countered some form of unpleasant rhetoric or comment from strangers when I was in Toronto or small town Ontario sometimes. And I always felt it walking around. It's funny because I definitely insist on dressing the way that I feel like, which is not the male uniform for Canadians, which is plaid, or some sort of t-shirt with a number on it, or a logo. This is what's acceptable for men to wear in Canada. And I would wear what I would wear in India, which is something colorful. I like stuff with print on it. I would wear a shirt with that print on it easily. Just some kind of Baroque or Renaissance kind of looking thing. And to me, that's just as masculine as a giant football jersey. And that's just, the way I think about things. But anyway, I didn't always feel safe walking around by myself. And I did in India, and I do in Thailand. Now, it might also help that I'm not from the culture that I'm living in. So I noticed that I myself am more forgiving of someone if they're from a different culture. I tend to just assume that difference is cultural, and I don't expect them to understand the same customs that I do. And maybe that is a factor when I'm in Canada. Anyway, spite of all this, I was not bullied in school when I was in Canada. I was kind of often friends with girls, and I was subjected to a different sort of meanness when I was in alternative school. Now, it's interesting because Marianne Williamson is advocating for what I suspect is kind of alternative school model. And from your friendly neighbor up north, it's not that I'm saying don't do it, but I am saying that I have a little bit of a question about the necessity of socializing children. I know that there's this idea out there, and I don't know if it's presented by psychologists or if it's just kind of a fear that people have generally. But there's like this idea that, you know, if your kids are raised at home and homeschooled and not allowed to play with other children, that they're going to turn into serial killers, or they're going to be weird or something. They probably would be a little bit unique, but I kind of have a real bad gut reaction to the sort of pack mentality that occurs when young people spend a lot of time together, and then they start going into this pecking order, and then the followers are doing what the leaders are saying they have to do. I mean, it's interesting because, you know, you might be the new kid in school, like, you know, in these movies like Jawbreaker, you know, she's the new girl in school, and then the popular girls go up to her and then they present her with a test, and they say, we hate her, and you have to too. And I hate that. If I hate anything, it's that syndrome. I realize that it's a little bit of a survival instinct, the pack mentality, you know, stick together, unify, and fight things. But I noticed that there was a kind of push in the Williamson campaign recently to unify, and I had a bad reaction to that. Like, we have to get unified and we have to get organized. And I do recognize that there is a value in being unified and organized, but I don't really like being whipped into it by self-appointed leaders, because I feel like, I don't know, it just doesn't motivate me to want to get into line. And anyway, I feel that the political parties are doing that, and I feel like the DNC is doing that. I feel like it's a mean girl phenomenon, and I also think that that particular survival instinct is outmoded. I think it's very suitable for if you are in a pack, if you are actually in a forest and you have to worry about predators, but I don't think that it is really suitable for civilized society. I think we should leave ourselves open to the option of evolving in new directions that are as yet unforeseen. Not necessarily taking the model of communism or socialism or capitalism and say, this is the way, because I think that the jury is in on all of them, and none of them are really the way. I don't think that monarchies were fabulous. I don't think that socialism isn't bad. Like, if you kind of mix it with capitalism, I feel like Bernie Sanders has a point there. You can kind of take the best of both. But it's not perfect. And I feel like unless we're going to say, okay, this is the status quo and we're going to maintain it forever, I feel like it's kind of a good idea to leave things open so that we can evolve in new directions. And that includes being open-minded about what kind of education systems we should have. I like the idea of Montessori, not Montessori necessarily as it is practiced. Like, this is the thing. The ideal behind libertarianism is a great idea, and the idea behind socialism and communism is actually a great idea. Like, these are all high-minded ideals, and then they end up getting practiced in some kind of really mean way, which I don't know how that happens. And I suspect it's just like people start doing things according to, okay, these are the rules, and we have to do it. And then, because they're kind of afraid to lose something, but they've lost the kind of what I would say actually is a very scientific approach, which is to be experimenting constantly, which I think is very valuable in any developing society. And humanity is a developing society. We're not a developed society, we're developing. According to Tantra, we have only reached the mammalian stage of evolution as human beings. We have not reached the human level. We're not actually human yet. We're still animals. We're still in the animal phase of human development. So, because if you look, okay, I'm going to go into a little rant here. If you look at the incarnations of Vishnu, you can see the evolution of man from like the fish, which is so ocean dwelling, and then the tortoise, which is amphibious, and then boar, which is mammalian, which is where we are now. And then after that is the avatar, which is half man, half lion. So it's like starting to become slightly human, but the head is still actually completely feral and hungry. And then the next one is the dwarf, which is human but stunted. And then after that, it starts to get more and more human, and then gradually more and more divine. So according to the tantric system, this is what's happening with humanity. And right now, we are still mammalian, which means we're still pretty much focused on survival, not philosophical ideals or cooperation, development, spiritual development, or intellectual development. None of those are really priorities. They are kind of, we use those things for survival. So survival is still the goal. And anyway, so in terms of that, then you can kind of see why people get into pack mentality, because survival is still very much what we focus on. But I think that it's kind of a good time to push for expanding the experiment, is what I want to say. Anyway, I mean, it is certainly not necessary for survival or conducive to intellectual, philosophical, or artistic development for men to all dress the same. I know I've kind of glossed over this topic a couple of times, but I remember, okay, just for example, in the 80s, men used to wear probably what we would now consider quite skimpy and gay clothes. Like, they were tighter, shorts were shorter, pants were tighter. So basically, in the 80s, it was acceptable for a man to present himself as a physical sex object, and in terms of his clothes, and be aware of himself as a sexually beautiful thing. And now, it's kind of like in the 90s, it became, there was this sort of push to allow men to be comfortable. And I'm in favor of both men and women being comfortable, but not at the expense of them wanting to be beautiful if they want, in their own way, you know? And it's not like, I kind of ideally would like to live in a society where fashion is not a thing, in terms of it being like pressure. It's one thing, you know, if certain trends evolve, but I don't, like, if you like what your friend's wearing and you want to wear the same thing, that's fine. But I don't like when people get into like ranking each other according to how, and then they say they're clueless, as if fashion is important. Like, oh, she's so clueless about style. And no, you're clueless because you think style is important. I mean, it's not. It's not important. We've made it important, and then it becomes important because everyone is kind of co-conspiring in the same mass delusion that this is essential. Anyway, And I mean, every single kind of time in history, and if you look at history, you can easily see this. Everyone thinks that what we know now is the height of truth and the height of beauty and the height of fashion. We're always like right at the peak, and I kind of question that. So anyway, yes, the Mean Girls. So I don't think that. I love the movie Jawbreaker though. I love it when they take that girl Fern, the Mean Girls, right? I can't remember. I think they're called the Plastics in Jawbreaker. Anyway, they take this girl Fern, who's like a brainy girl who likes to study, and then they give her a makeover, and then there's this girl that she replaced in the clique who was always kind of nice to her, and she comes up to her and she goes, "Oh, hi Fern, how are you?" And then Fern goes, "It's Violet." And then Rose McGowan, who's the head of the clique, goes, "Learn it, live it," and then all in unison they go, "Love it." And I thought it was very funny. But okay, so it was a very poetic way of exposing that syndrome of how people turn little tiny cliques, and it's all about, nothing. It's actually, I mean, what I object to about it is it's the same kind of thing that happened with religion. I think that like your personal belief about what is going on in the universe in terms of the unseen or what you believe, we have the power of belief and imagination. I think that is a very personal thing, and it really should only be up to you to decide what you believe in. I don't think people should be telling you that, and I don't think people should be telling you what you should like either, or what you should wear. Within the kind of scope, within the realm of not harming anyone else. So, so my dad watches my videos, and I just thought of this as I'm making this video. My dad watches my videos, and he told me that I'm a little subdued, that was the word that he used, as compared to how I talk to him when we're talking. I'm supposedly very animated and dramatic when I talk to him, and he wanted to see more of that in my videos, and I don't really know if I can pull that out. I kind of think I'm already sort of animated, but anyway. We'll see what comes out. I'm more animated than I was when I started making these, definitely, so. Excuse me. So maybe I'll just keep developing also. Anyway, what did I just talk about? Mean Girls, yes, pack mentality. Let's not do that. I don't think it's a kind of I think it's a devolving thing. It's a devolving syndrome. I don't think it's part of human evolution to copy each other endlessly. I mean, if you want to do it because you feel shy or whatever, why not? Do it, copy, and then build on it also. Like, copy what your friend's wearing, or copy what your friend's saying, and then kind of add your own spin on it, and then, at least some creativity is happening. And I guess I'm done. Blessed be.